Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Nadex Morning Analysis, where we look at some potential hotspots in the markets for today. It is Tuesday, July 20th. I am Todd Rich with Nadex. With me from Keep Trading Simple is Brian Caprice. Before Brian and I jump into some hotspots for today, I do need to quickly share this disclaimer that trading involves risk and may not be appropriate for everyone. That any trading decisions you make are solely your responsibility and at your own risk. And please do not construe anything we say today as a buy or sell recommendation. We are doing this for your education purposes. So what are we seeing today? Well, clearly yesterday the markets, it was not pretty in the U.S. equity markets. Everything got hammered. We are seeing a bit of a bounce this morning, so U.S. equities are catching a bounce. We are going to take a look at some technical levels across the different U.S. equity indices. But before we get over there, we are also seeing the pound, the British pound, get hammered. Now, the best that we can find on why the pound, and you can see the pound, I mean, this chart, it's starting to look ugly. Why is the pound getting hit so hard? And it's the State Department yesterday did issue a warning for U.S. travelers. They are having a significant outbreak of the coronavirus in the UK. It is the Delta variant. So even though they are opening things back up in the UK and they're trying to fire up their economy, the coronavirus is boomeranging back around. We're seeing that in the United States as well. That's seems to be the reason why the U.S. equities got hit so hard yesterday. Is people are concerned about the recovery. I mean, it looked like we had a light at the end of the tunnel and clear roads ahead, but this Delta variant is coming back, and it's certainly impacting certain pockets and disrupting the recovery level. So with that, I also want to remind everyone, in fact, I'm going to drop this into the chat right now. Brian does a full-blown, let me send this out, analysis every Tuesday. So if you're not registered for these, I just dropped the link out. It's at noon Eastern every Tuesday. So 11 a.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, noon Eastern. I just dropped the link out there so that everyone could see it. If you're not registered, register for it. And what we will do is we're going to look at the pound now. We're going to look at some technical levels. We'll look at some technical levels in the indices. And then we want to encourage you to come back in a few hours and we'll go through everything. We'll run the gamut. So Brian, with that, I'm going to whip it over to you and let's drop this in and let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the pound and where you might see some technical levels there.
Yeah, I mean, the pound is, it's been weak lately. There was an economic report that comes out. Very difficult to find those reports, by the way. But if you actually go over to, I found it on the United Kingdom actual kind of Bank of England page. They have a weekly report that comes out on Thursdays, and it was pretty weak last time, given some dovish data. And actually, there was it's referenced right here on the DailyFX website about the British pound, Q3 fundamental forecast. Remember, this is kind of what they're looking at going forward, and some of the things that I think are adding into this. And this came out about 4 o'clock this morning, talking about how again the UK expects a growth of 7.25%, but inflation is likely to exceed 3% for a temporary period. So we're hearing that temporary piece again. When you're looking at kind of some of the data in here, though, it's definitely more of a dovish kind of expectation. And again, they're highlighting it in here. If you guys remember, we mentioned it yesterday, New Zealand is talking about a 90% chance of raising the interest rate to help curb inflation, where the pound is, it's a very kind of, I don't know, I would say it's kind of on the weaker side of things. There's actually really nothing, there's no data in here that's really talking about kind of any increasing rates. That was actually in a different article. But again, on a fundamental forecast, it's kind of there. They're saying that this is going to be extremely weak. So it's kind of like one thing on top of another thing, on top of another thing. These kind of like little things that keep chipping away over at the pound. So, it's kind of interesting. Right now, I mean, we can see, and they're actually coming back right now, but the pound's down 108 in 24 hours. The pound yen down 114, which is really not That's not really that crazy. That's actually under 1 ATR right now, but it is a big one, and you can see in the last 15 minutes, you're seeing a little bit of a retrace back up as there's some profit taking. The euro pound up 58 is pretty significant for that pair, but at the same time, the euro dollar's down a little bit. So you're seeing basically dollar strength across the board. I wouldn't say that it's amazing dollar strength. And again, clicking across because that's where everything needs to start. That's kind of where this is the dollar index, right? The Dixie. And you're seeing yesterday, we had that huge push up and we talked about a retracement. It actually happened very, very fast, came all the way back down to 92.60 and then kind of pulled itself back up again. And then this morning in the European session, kind of drove it down. And at 5 o'clock, we pushed. Now, we're sitting in a selling area right now. So all the dollar strength we have seen, again, session open, we're running into a level. This tends to be where you start to see some reversals for things. And again, bringing it across to something like the pound dollar, this is what the pound dollars look like. You can see that there's this 135.83 level. This is actually a 4-hour slash. I just wrote it down. I think it's a 4-hour slash. Is it daily as well? Yeah, it's a 4-hour and daily level. So it is one of the larger time frame levels that there were buyers in the past. So again, coinciding with it, it may actually be a long opportunity. Again, that would be some profit taking. As you can see, we kind of pulled back up at that 4 o'clock time window and we're down about 80 pips. So most of this movement, if I take it from the European session high, let's see, from there, 85 pips since the UK session. So it was already trending in that direction. It gave us a nice little pullback into that zone. And again, this is that trend continuation. There was an area of interest that we had talked about. And again, there's your base pullback. There's another base and a pullback. So there was two different ways that you could have gotten short this one in that kind of Harry Potterish trade. But I think at this point, we're at an area where, there could be some potential reversals coming in, at least for profit taking. Big question is, do you want to kind of try to catch the falling knife is the real question in the pound dollar. And again, pound yen is in a similar situation. We've pushed down now into a 4-hour level. We talked about yesterday, there was a 148.75 level, and there's actually a 148.53 knockout sitting right down there. The risk is getting small, but it's kind of the same thing. Do you want to go in there and try to, get in the way of this one on the way down? And if you do, you got to make sure it's very limited risk based off of what we're hearing. Yeah, so that's what I got for the pound right now.
Excuse me there, as I'm recovering from a little bit of a cold. All right, so we got the pound weakness, looking for potentially a bounce back as the European traders step off the desks, the U.S. traders come in, and maybe a little bit of profit taking there. Let's jump over. Let's face it, we got to talk about the U.S. equities. Everything got hammered yesterday. The Dow was down over 2%. Everything we're at the open, we're looking across the board, Dow, NASDAQ, S&P, everything's looking like it's going to open up about 0.5%. So a little bit of a bounce, but let's take a look at some technical levels. Let's just run the gamut on those three indices, see if we got some technical levels there, and then we'll encourage everyone to come to the session in 3 hours.
Yeah, so yesterday we talked about, let's see, let's go back down to 50.
Which one do you want to do first?
We'll just start with the yes. It just makes the most sense to go there.
All right, there we go.
So yesterday we were up in this area and we talked about a potential pullback level. Here's the 9 o'clock candle. We talked about a level of basing. And again, we had the open. It just continued. It just collapsed all the way down to the 42.38. We got a little bit of a pullback and a bounce from that level. And we talked about if we could get a break of that 42.38. I'll move it over. You guys can see it. That there was a 1 to 3. It was close right to the next level. And you can see it hit that next level, bounced up again, and then had a hard time going back through. We never got the second entry that we were looking for, but we were able to get the first one. And, basically, this is what happens. You have a trend for one day, and then the reversal kicked in at the end of the day, right? We had this like 345 kind of end of the day rally pushing us back higher again. Now, in the overnight, you can see that same level would have clicked in again here, right around midnight. It kind of kicked in and pulled back, and it pulled back actually to a level right there where you can see that we had that big pop, a little base, and then it kind of stabilized itself after the market was over, and that rallied is higher. Right now, if we move everything forward, though, I'll just take a new one, actually, right here. This is kind of what we're looking at right now. Although everything is green, you can see that we had sellers stepping in above here. Now, it did break through. I would say I would probably watch out for this area up top a little bit because you can see there's a couple kind of impulse correction moves on the way down. I would say right now, the way that it's setting up, it looks like it's going to be pushing back to the downside. Thus far, there's not a ton of buyers down here until we get back all the way down to 42.55. And the reality of the situation is if the Delta variant is really that big of a threat, it's going to affect the U.S. market as well. I know you mentioned there's a travel advisory going to the U.K. If it's that big of a deal, it hasn't disappeared in one day. Um,
Yeah.
I still believe that it's more of an inflationary issue than it is the Delta variant. And again, we're seeing this where Monday we have one strong trend with the dollar, and then we kind of flip back and forth again. If there's really that much fear, it will continue. It will be back down red again today. And if so, prepare for those same type of level shorts. Now, I would say, this is still a valid entry down here at 42.25. Profit taking down here. I would say at this point, though, if that's the case, we need to get rid of this one. That is over. We don't need this anymore. Get rid of that. And I would have to say, if we start collapsing again, we have a racetrack scenario here. So there's a potential for another short trade coming in right here if we turn negative, and your 1 to 3 is sitting right there. And again, that's before your profit target, which would be drawn in right at that level. So as far as what we have in that one, I think that's it's a decent trade if we start dropping. It could bounce off that level. That's another thing. We have about 30 minutes. It would have to come over quite a bit, but maybe even for a 10:30 reversal. If we come down and then buyers look like they're going to step in. I mean, unfortunately, there's no major news releases today. They don't kick in really till tomorrow, and really it's just oil.
And then Thursday is the ECB.
Yeah, but that's not going to necessarily affect the ES.
Friday,
yeah, Friday with the manufacturing services data, that will affect the ES a little bit. But
100%.
This is one of those kind of anemic weeks as far as U.S. news goes. We just don't have a lot of it.
I just want to do something just quickly. Put your ES chart. Yeah, you got your ES chart up there. I just want to show, if you weren't following along, I was just trying to. I brought my charts up on the Nadex platform because I know some people are trying to follow along and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" You can. I mean, I had this up on a separate screen, and I'm following what Brian's doing. I didn't have my levels drawn on there, but I was able to bring this chart up, see exactly what he's doing, and drop onto my chart levels that Brian's got up there to help you. So if you're trying to follow along, you can actually see the picture of what Brian's doing, and you can follow along and put these on your chart if you want. Again, not buy or sell recommendations, but then you could save your chart and come back and review it later throughout the day as Brian's going. You can do both. It's actually very handy. Just thought I'd point that out there that you can do that as he's talking. You want to jump over and take a peek at the NASDAQ and the Dow quickly before we call the morning? Which one do you want to do next?
Here's NQ.
Right, so
we did not get an entry. It wasn't as clean yesterday. You can see it kind of poked through, but never gave us any type of a base or really kind of a close below. So, excuse me, I would say that one is still valid. It would be a break below 14,456. But again, similar racetrack and basing at that level. You can see that, more or less it has stabilized itself in that range. And again, with a break of that, it's basically the same trade setup. I think this one would move probably be a little bit cleaner. But it would be a break somewhere along those lines. Your 1 to 3 is sitting in that level, and again, well ahead of where the profit target is. The opposing buyers don't come in until it's a 1 to 6.4, so plenty of room to run on that one. And again, could we take a bounce off this level? Sure, we absolutely could. I mean, it's done it already, right? It's hit here, and we're kind of hitting it that third time. But the reason why I'm looking at this as more of a short type of setup is because if you look at the tops, you can see we touch there, we touch there, we touch there. The highs are getting lower, meaning we're establishing sellers here, sellers here, sellers here. So there's a lot more to chunk through. And again, is it overly bearish? Maybe, right? But again, if the true nature of this market is to, prey upon fear and the Delta variant is what's really driving this, what drove all this, then nothing has changed in 24 hours. They have not come out with another vaccine or another dose. Nothing's really changed, so it's kind of the same setup, but a break of 14,577. YM is kind of a similar scenario. Here was the trade that we had yesterday. This one...
Well, I'm jumping over there. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm trying to follow along. Hang on.
Yeah, I mean, this one didn't give us as clean of an entry. It did come down and gave us a pullback, but it wasn't as clean as what we saw in the ES. But it did go all the way through and then kind of break. Once it finally kind of closed below there, you can see it did pull back. So depending on how aggressive of a trader you are, you may or may not have gotten into this one. But it did hit its 1 to 3 target and then did the same thing. It kind of rallied back up again. So we'll remove that now. We're going to adjust the area of interest down a little bit. We're going to kind of put it across as, being an area where we could have some potential. Now, this one does have basing, but it's not as clean as you can see. If we talk about where these last sellers stepped in, you can see it did the same thing. It came back down to the base again. So still kind of the same type of area up top. This one is not as clean as I mentioned. I mean, you can see that there's a little bit of an area right there, and that's kind of where we're sitting. There's another little base right here that I'd watch out for. And again, it's not like it's a new base. It actually, it's from there originally, right? This last push, and then it hit it here, and then hit it here. So that's another area. That could be where we look. But, if it really comes down to finding the best opportunity, I would say that, if we start coming this low, the market is kind of doomed for a rough day anyway. So it's kind of just adding into it. And I'll drop that over there so you guys can see it. And that's a break of 33,839. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of the same thing, but of the three, the YM is my least favorite in there. The rest of them had that racetrack. This one had a bit more of a pullback, and then again, just buyers stepping in down here. So any type of short position below that, I think 33,664 would be decent. Also on this one too, just the daily ATR right now was 404. So when you look at what is possible right now, if I draw this, let's see where are we at. 404 is there. So that's what's possible today. Let me change the color of this so you guys can see it. This is what the average. Here, I'll change it to purple, so it's really crazy. From where we are, we could go up or we could go down. Right. So I mean, really, even if we take half that, that's what's possible today. And again, will we do at least half? Yeah, probably. So, I mean, up or down, you can see that it's going to move in one of these two directions and give us kind of a new clear trend. But the same thing I mentioned last time, you have a high there, a high there, and a high there. We're touching 3 times. And again, sellers are all kind of positioning themselves up top, and there's not as many strong buyers below until we get all the way down at 33,664.
And the other thing that I want to remind everyone, this is the Dow, the NASDAQ. I know that we're in earnings season. I believe Netflix is going to be releasing their earnings today after the close. Mm-hmm. When you've got some of these larger names that impact the NASDAQ, like Netflix, it's all those FANG stocks you got to keep an eye out for: Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. If those individual stocks move, they're so heavily weighted in the NASDAQ that you can see that index move a bit with them. So just be aware that that's actually happening today after the close. So you could potentially see some action in the NASDAQ index today around anticipated moves and potential moves in Netflix. You got anything else for us here, Brian, as we wrap things up for this morning?
Bezos is ready to blast off. He's ready to go.
Speaking of Amazon, there we go.
yeah, he's ready to go. His sister has his message. I will say it looks much, much cooler. I like that it's actually a rocket, but there was a funny article about how the blue spacesuits are actually not needed with that style, but they're wearing the blue spacesuits anyway.
That's because they look cool.
Well, that's kind of what they said. It's just to look cool. They're not actually needed. So,
come on, if you're going to spend that kind of money, at least you want to look cool.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. So it is definitely an interesting. Again, that Carmen line is a big thing. That's internationally, that's the recognition. So, he'll be the first one to actually break it. That is a
non-astronaut.
Yeah, the non-astronaut. Well,
or whatever
he'll officially be an astronaut because he'll break the Karman line. He'll get his actual wings internationally, not just U.S. So there's no asterisk next to his name.
There we go. Wow, impressive.
Yeah, so it'll be a good day in the markets, though. So
I guess that's what you do. All right, with that, you got any questions for Nadex, please email us, customerservice@nadex.com, whether it's about the platform, our markets, our products, any of it, please. We can't help you if you don't reach out to us. Brian is also very accessible. You got questions for Brian, please email him, support@keeptradingsimple.com. With that, I want to remind everyone, I did drop a link in. There's going to be, in 3 hours, a full-blown session that's it'll encapsulate what happened at the open this morning, and it'll be across the spectrum, across all the products. So please, if you haven't registered, join us. And what we're looking at for the open here, the pound did get hammered overnight. And we did see U.S. equities all catching a little bit of a bounce following yesterday's rout. With that, we will catch you hopefully in 3 hours. Otherwise, tomorrow morning. Thanks, everyone, and good luck in the markets.